Hi, John Morgan here, and welcome to the first episode of the Keep Growing podcast. Gardening is fun and rewarding, but it can be a bit of a challenge for beginners. We're here to help you learn the basics, get creative, and keep growing. Whether you just want to grow flowers in a pot on your front porch, or acres of vegetables to sell at the local farmer's market, this is the podcast for you. In this episode, I'm going to do a bit of a short introduction. First things first, let's get sponsorship out of the way. I work for a company called Bob's Market and Greenhouses in Mason, West Virginia, and they're sponsoring this podcast. We're a wholesale greenhouse that specializes in growing seedling plugs that get transplanted into finished containers, like you might find at a big box store like Home Depot or at your local independent garden center. We grow around 150 million seedlings per year. Not to brag, but that puts us in the top 10 seedling growers in the U.S. We also operate some garden centers of our own. We have 3 locations in the Mid-Ohio Valley, Mason, West Virginia, Belpre, Ohio, and Gallipolis, Ohio, and also a both retail and wholesale location in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Atlanta State Farmers Market, and then we also have a wholesale location in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. If you garden on the East Coast, there's a high probability you bought a plant at some point that got its start here in West Virginia. In a later episode, we might sit down with the founder of Bob's Market, Bob Barnitz, to hear the history of the company. I don't want to get spoilery, but it started off almost 50 years ago in his backyard, and today we have 25 acres of greenhouses under roof and around 150 employees. I don't want you to get the wrong impression, though. We're not going to be spamming your podcast feed with an advertisement for Bob's every other week. However, I do plan to interview experts in our industry that are relevant to the topics at hand. My goal for this first season is to cover the basics of gardening. How basic, you say? I'm approaching this as if a group of aliens just landed in my garden and I have to teach them about plants. Anyhow, we're going to get basic, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't listen if you're already an experienced gardener. I'm going to shoot for a mix that is educational, but also peppered with odd facts and tidbits for seasoned gardeners too. I'm an odd fact kind of guy. My wife likes to say I have quote-unquote Jeopardy knowledge. My goal is to help everyone grow as gardeners, and I might even get a little bit philosophical about gardening at times. In fact, I firmly believe growing plants makes us better people. That's part of why our company motto is growing flowers, friends, and family. To quote the great American botanist Luther Burbank, flowers always make people better, happier, and more helpful. They are sunshine, food, and medicine for the soul. Gardening is a lifestyle choice. You won't hear about plant it and forget it plants on this podcast. Gardening takes time, commitment, and a willingness to learn from failure. I know I've killed my share of plants over the years. Although I plan to have periodic guests on our podcast, it's me you'll be hearing each week as we explore the world of gardening. The funny thing is that even though I work for a large wholesale greenhouse, my primary job isn't particularly plant-related. My official job title, if I had one, would be IT specialist. Yep, I'm a computer geek. However, being a medium-sized company, I handle quite a few other tasks. When I'm not troubleshooting servers, helping users with questions, or replacing outdated equipment. I am also working on our website, creating blog posts and videos, and giving facility tours or speaking at events like garden clubs. My first career was actually in education. I have a BA in secondary education with a specialization in biology and technology education. That's convenient for my career now. Sometime in the nearly 10 years I've worked at Bob's, I slowly became our educational outreach person, along with handling IT. So you might wonder, what's my gardening street cred, aside from having a biology education degree? Well, I happened to grow up on a 25-acre farm here in West Virginia. One of my earliest memories as a child is following Grandpa through the garden as he tilled between rows with a push cultivator. My grandpa and my dad taught me everything I know about gardening. Growing up on a small farm in a West Virginia community had an enormous impact on my life. Gardening is a great way to teach children lessons that will continue to grow throughout their lives. In life, you have to start right. Whether raising a child or raising a garden, you have to create a place for them to grow and flourish. Plants need a nurturing home. That's why we till the garden, add lime to adjust the pH, and add compost to give those little seedlings the best start possible. Once the roots are established, that little sprout will grow into a healthy, vigorous plant with proper care. I learned that gardening takes discipline, responsibility, and patience. If you work hard, remove weeds, nourish with fertilizer, train young vines, and give your plants plenty of water, you will succeed. Gardening will give you a harvest equal to the amount of effort you're willing to put into it. It was in the garden that I first observed nature up close. Watching ants construct their little cities, bees buzzing around blossoms, and plucking off potato bugs. That job also taught me patience. Looking back, it's no surprise that I majored in biology and technology education. I've always been fascinated by the miracle and mysteries of the world around us. Whether dissecting a flower to learn its parts, or taking apart our VCR to see how it worked. Anyhow, gardening connects us to nature. It teaches us right from wrong in a very real and tangible way. I remember losing a crop of freshly transplanted tomato plants when I was a teenager because, hey, it was hot outside, and there also happened to be a Star Trek marathon on TV. I am a geek after all. But gardening takes responsibility. In many ways, it's a microcosm of our own life. We should always strive to be the best gardeners we can be. And that also happens to bring us back to the reason for this podcast, growing better gardeners. If you ever have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email at keepgrowing@bobsmarket.com, or you can live chat with me via our website, bobsmarket.com, during my office hours. Until next time, keep growing. The music in this week's episode is by Silent Partner, and the alien sound effect is by JZ Grok. They are all licensed under Creative Commons licenses. You can learn more about Bob's Market and greenhouses at bobsmarket.com. You can also find us on social media at Bob's Market. Copyright 2018, Bob's Market and Greenhouses, Incorporated.